Extraordinary Advisor Show. My name is Ellen Rogan, and as always, I have great guests that have fabulous, really useful information to help you in every part of your life, especially your business. And we have a multiple returning guest, David Fisher, who's been on the show many times. I cannot, as much as I try. No, he keeps agreeing to come back on. And we have a really interesting topic today, which is about how do you network in the time of coronavirus and everything being virtual, and what's changed and what's stayed the same, and how can you approach this business building part of your practice in kind of new and updated ways. So let me give you David's official bio besides FOE, friend of Ellen.
The most important
one. David J.P. Fisher, also known as D. Fish, is a speaker, coach, author of, get this, 9 books. David and I met years ago in kind
12 now. Sorry to interrupt. But the new ones were 12. I know, it's old.
12 books. I changed part of this for you. Yeah, so 12 books. And we reconnected a few years back when he came out with, most of them are business books, but he came out with a haiku book. And I'm on David's mailing list, which you should all be. And I'm like, haiku, like, how can I not connect with someone that has a haiku book? Because he's very humble about is that David's actually super brilliant, but doesn't make the mere mortals of us feel stupid about it. So, back to his official bio. He's a speaker, coach, and author of 12 books, including the bestseller, newly released, hyper-connected selling. That's the re-released one, right?
That's the one that just came out. The new ones are Networking in the 21st Century, and then Networking in the 21st Century on LinkedIn. That's right. Two releases in the same day. So I'm nuts that way.
Yeah. So like, how awesome. Any of you that have contemplated writing a book, David's written 12 and re-released 2 of them at the same time that are coming out any second now. And so Networking in the 21st Century and Networking in the 21st Century on LinkedIn are the books. We're going to kind of focus more on those topics today. But David's also like an amazing sales trainer. And so all of you know out there, he's so good. I have so much confidence. I've referred him to a lot of organizations for speaking and for people to work one-on-one with. So yay, David, thank you for being here.
I've got what I need. I just need to pick me up, some validation for my ego. So just show up and let Ellen
call anytime. Yes, anytime. Okay. So with Corona and everything that's changed with us being more online, mostly, I would say for most people, why do you think that advisors need to kind of bring attention back to their digital presence and engagement?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And one of the things that was the prompt for these updated books was, let's go back to March 2020, and we're freaking out, and all of a sudden all of the in-person just stops. And, I remember people going, oh, this will be for a week or 2 weeks. And obviously over 18 months later, we're still wrestling, and depending on where you are in the situation you're in, wrestling with this inability sometimes to connect in person or live. And what I think people really had to do is look at some of these digital tools. For example, we're talking about LinkedIn in one of the books. And for years, I've been telling advisors, hey, there's a lot to be gained here. If you put a little strategic effort and attention on it. And it was just like, whatever, I don't really need it. All of a sudden they needed it because they weren't going to go to that networking event. They weren't going to go to lunch with their existing client. They weren't going to talk to that strategic center of influence that they get referrals from. And so it kind of pushed them out of the nest a little bit as far as the digital aspect of relationship building. At the same time, I think the way to use digital, and this was pre-pandemic, but definitely in the world we're in now, is not as a replacement for the idea of relationship building. For me, what it really is how do we use all of the tools that we have available, all of the channels, offline, online, to build better relationships with the people that we want to serve. And I think that because of this post-pandemic world that we're in, and post-pandemic for me does not mean the pandemic is over. It's just, anything after March 2020, we just have to wrestle with all of these different tools. Again, whether it's the old school, going to a conference, going to a networking event, again, all of the things that we had, but then really looking at how to use this digital presence. And once you kind of get under the surface a little bit, you'll find that it actually can help you scale your business really effectively. You build stronger relationships, you create more engagement. And there's a really exciting opportunity, I think, for advisors there.
Do you think that it's going to go back to the way it was? Yeah, I don't either. I just feel into my resistance of, so I live in the suburbs north of Chicago, as you know, which you do as well. And like the idea of getting in my car at the end of the day, getting stuck in traffic with heels on, looking a certain way to go to a networking event. I was like,
yeah,
like, why would I want to do that? But, sometimes I know it, like, of course it's beautiful to be in person with people, but like, what's your sense of what's going to happen, at least in the medium term?
Yeah, right. And this is just a guess. Anybody who tells you they know what's going to happen in the future is just trying to sell you something. I don't think that we're going to completely go back to, quote unquote, the way it was. And I mean, there are people that are just waiting for that, and it's not going to happen. And the reason why I think this is the case is because we have seen some of the advantages of the digital. And I'm with you. There's nothing that can replace being in a shared environment with someone. As much as I think networking events, for example, get a bad rap, and many of them deserve it. But being able to be in a space with people that you do enjoy, having those conversations. I think conferences, for example, will come back. I don't know if they'll ever be as big, or it'll take a long time till they're the 20,000 ones. Attendee ones will come back, but I think some of the smaller ones will, and those are all great. And I don't think that we should, hide from those. But at the same time, I think of LinkedIn, for example, and being able to share a post and have 1,000 people, 2,000 people. I had something I posted the other day that had over 11,000 views. There's a scalability, right? That couple minutes of effort for that sort of visibility, like that's never going to happen in person. And likewise, the ability to use, whether it's LinkedIn and just kind of engage in conversations with people, or Zoom, we just have a lot more channels. And so I think we're going to have to, but I also think, again, the people that really learn how to leverage this most effectively are going to be more, they're going to do better by their customers. They're going to probably have more of them. They're going to save some time and energy and effort. We just have to look at new ways of doing business.
So if you have, let's bring this to where an advisor also might be able to think of how this could help her business or his business. So like, let's say you get a really popular post. Now you have books coming out, so I could see why that could be leveraged, but let's say they post a video or something that's really popular. Like, how do you turn that into a relationship or a prospect or a client?
Yeah, I love that question, because it actually highlights, I think, the wrong mindset, which is super, super common. And I mean, I kind of fed into this by saying, I had this post that got seen by a lot of people, and that's great. But the key is not that I had that one post. The key was that, or is that I'm present on a regular basis. I post, most weekdays. I'm engaged in conversation with a pretty broad network of people through my presence. That is actually the big key. A lot of people, advisors and just professionals in general, they go, well, hey, I posted this one time and nothing happened, so it doesn't work, right? The key really, I talk about in one of my books, Hyperconnected Selling, the concept of the sales Sherpa, where really I think moving forward, we're going to see that effective salespeople are ones that occupy a space of expertise in the minds of their network, in this case, as well, their prospects. It goes back to something that has been very commonly said in the financial advising space, which is you want to be a trusted advisor. Well, you have to be a trusted advisor now, because if it's just information you have, I can go get that from a website somewhere. I can go buy a financial product without an advisor. I don't need you anymore. So what I think is important is that advisors are really present in these places, whether they're offline or in this case, online, LinkedIn, on a consistent basis, being there and demonstrating their expertise. And that a lot of times just comes from sharing insights, sharing information. And not every post has to be, the viral post. Not everything has to go gangbusters. But if you're there regularly, people are commenting and saying, oh, hey, that's good information. Thanks for sharing. Then you can start, you can respond back, again, have that little conversation in the comments. Sometimes there might be a place to say that right away, like, hey, let's have a one-on-one conversation. But also it might be just a place where you're building up social capital so that when there is an opportunity, you can leverage it. But that's the key. It's not just one and done, right? You have to be there on a regular basis.
Well, it's like when you said that, I was thinking about when I used to be super involved in some networking groups in Chicago, and someone would come and go, well, I went to a meeting and nothing good came out of it. It was like, right. Of course that doesn't make any sense. So what are some ways to actually build relationships on LinkedIn? And then I want to go up to having your presence be differentiated, or so people know what you're about. But let's start with, and we could start with specifically on LinkedIn, whether it's, let's say it's someone you don't really know, but you'd like to know. Yeah.
So I would say almost the same approach that you would take offline. So use that example of, hey, I went to a networking event, and I've heard this all the time as well. I went to this event once that I didn't get a new client, so obviously it doesn't work. What you tell that person is, no, you keep going and you keep showing up and you keep saying hello, and maybe you have a little conversation here and a little conversation there. In many ways, it is very similar in LinkedIn. And so the first thing I would say, you talked about standing out, it's actually being present. I talk in the book about 3 levels. I talk about concentration, curation, creation. So the first step is to just concentrate on your network. You can actually be really successful without posting anything, just by going and paying attention to what people in your network are sharing. In fact, I love this if you're doing the offline networking, to kind of put them together. I think that's the ideal. You and I see each other at an event, and then I see one of your posts. Hey, Ellen, great stuff. Thanks for sharing, right? There's that another point of contact, and then maybe engage again. So I think just the ability to like and comment on content, very specifically here on LinkedIn, super valuable, really underutilized. I mean, if you're listening, you want to take your LinkedIn relationships and engagement just in general up a notch, go online every day and comment authentically on 10 posts. Do that every day. I guarantee you things will happen. But then, we talk about curation and creation, the idea of curating content or creating your own content. I think the really underused opportunity for advisors is curating content. A lot of them think hey, I don't have time to create stuff and write posts. I get that. Creating good content is hard. I do it. And it's my job. So I've got a lot of expertise around it and skill that I've developed over years. It still takes me time. I get it. It might not be a priority. But if you're good at your job in the financial space, you are doing a lot of research, you're reading stuff, you're seeing what's going on in, the markets and just, different products and, hey, what's happening in the regulatory environment. You have that knowledge, but you need to share it. And so the idea of saying, hey, here's a Wall Street Journal article on X, Y, and Z, and adding in just your couple of sentences of insight on that, you do that regularly, you start to occupy a space in people's minds. You become that Sherpa, so that when they are like, hey, you know what, me and the wife were talking and we need to sit down and actually create a plan. We've never really talked to somebody before. You're the person they think about, right? And that's really, I think, where a huge opportunity is. And then when you're posting that, again, people comment, you comment back. It is at its core, the trick is a mindset. Don't think of social media as a megaphone. Think of it as a place to have a conversation, right? Nice. The more you think of it back and forth, you will start those conversations. And naturally, at some point you say, hey, you know what? It sounds like I should help you with this. Let's grab a meeting, or you want to grab a Zoom call, or hey, you want to get coffee. Yeah, I think that's what's key.
I love that. And I love the idea of curating also content that's aligned with your view on things or your brand. I can think of an advisor that I met many years ago at a meeting. I was moderating a panel she was speaking on, and she always shares great content that she found on her area. One of her main areas is working with breadwinner women, and just on what's going on with women. And I love what she's posting. It's always an interesting article I might not have found. Mm-hmm. And what ended up happening, because she's constantly putting out good information, she had a book come out, and I was like, oh, I didn't know she had a book, and she's going to be a guest on our show in a few weeks. Nice. Because I reached out, I'm like, hey, do you remember me? Blah, blah, blah. And we were able to start a conversation. But if she hadn't been consistently posting, and again, on a topic that is really kind of her sweet spot or something that she cares about.
Yeah, that's relevant to her. And I talk a lot about having different themes that you talk about on LinkedIn. And I think the key is with branding in general. And, you asked earlier or mentioned the idea of like having a differentiator or not necessarily unique, but definitely differentiated approach. A lot of it's just about connecting with what is important to you and what is important to the clients that you work with. I mean, I have obviously many advisors. I've been working with financial service providers for almost 15 years. I have a lot of them in my network on LinkedIn. Not everybody is posting a lot. I'd love to see more. But of the ones that do, it's interesting to me, like how different, they are, right? They're all, and not to upset anybody, but let's face it, many financial products relatively similar. Yes, there's some nuances and tweaks here and there, some different approaches, but the true selling point that you're bringing to work with you is you. So if you're, to your point, an advisor that works with women or breadwinner women or advisors, I know or not advisors, entrepreneurs, or I have someone in my network who works a lot with doctors, right? And so, yes, talking about financial topics, but definitely around those ideas of healthcare and practice management and all of those things. Or, I have someone in my network who works a lot with same-sex couples, right? And so talking not only about financial planning, but through that lens, that's who you are offline. So it's a matter of bringing a little bit of that online, right? The post that I mentioned that got quite a few views was actually about the importance of your spouse or significant other and the impact that person has on your business. Because it was me and my wife's 5-year wedding anniversary, right? And so I was just thinking, I'm like, hey, if I had a different type of person who maybe wasn't as supportive or wasn't, who didn't have my back like my wife does, that would have a huge impact. So it was a business post, but also very, personal. I think it helped that I posted a picture from our wedding, and she's a good looking woman. So that helped, right? I'm married up, as I said. Yep. I'm married up, as I say.
Funny.
But yeah, so I think that's a key part of it, is just being okay with sharing who you are, what's important, what you focus on, because people are, not everybody, but the right people are going to gravitate towards you, right? And that's what you want.
Yeah, your ideal client. So, okay, so now that people are used to more of this screen stuff, and maybe, like as you said at the beginning, comfortable or not comfortable going out for networking meetings, like how do you build that network now? Like, how do I start to meet new centers of influence or build those relationships? What's changed and maybe what hasn't changed?
Yeah. So what's interesting about that is I do think there is value still, and we'll have more of the in-person and the networking events or the conferences. I do think those are valuable as kind of quick injections of new blood, right? I also don't think that those are networking. I often equate like a networking event to a singles bar if you're single. You don't go there and try to marry somebody there. You go there because everybody's kind of got the same mindset, is open to possibly going on some dates, finding out if there's some traction. That's the same thing that I look at a conference or a networking event as. It's a chance to meet a bunch of people, and maybe some of them are worth following up with. That follow-up is where the networking is. So if you're not in a place where you can do that yet, or you just don't feel it might be a while till you're comfortable with that. how do you bring in new people? Well, LinkedIn is a place to do this. I found that I have some really amazing connections. In fact, going back to the book, it's probably too small on the screen here, but this is the cover of the LinkedIn book. My friend Ryan Roten wrote the cover blurb for it. He has a great book called LinkedIn Made Simple, and he's somebody I met probably 6 or 7 years ago on LinkedIn. We didn't meet for the first time until about 4 months ago in person, right? But I mean, good friend. He recommended me to business, vice versa. So that's something you can do is if you're there on LinkedIn a lot, you're going to have conversations with people. You're going to like what they post. All you do is send a quick message. Hey, I've seen your stuff on LinkedIn. I'm in this space as well. Or, hey, I'd love to get your feedback on this. Would you be up for a 30-minute Zoom call? So that's one way of getting some new blood in. And it's great because it's really targeted, right? You already know what they're doing, what they're about. The other thing that has been something that's been important for me, and this was pre-pandemic, but definitely in the pandemic for me, new people, is ask your current network. If you're having a cup of coffee, a virtual cup of coffee, a Zoom meeting, staying in touch with somebody, just ask, hey, one of the things I've been trying to do is meet some new people. And it's been really hard because of the pandemic, but I just would love to see some new faces. Who do you know that I don't know that you think I should? Is there one or two people that you think that I should be talking to? Not because I'm trying to sell them something, but you just think that they're a person that I should have in my network. And would you feel comfortable introducing us? It's that simple.
Beautiful.
Because everybody you're already that are in your network that you like, they know people like them. So I think that's a great, easy way. It's comfortable, and again, that introduction will usually get you at least a 30-minute conversation. And the key is just to go into it and then find out about them. And again, it's not a selling. You're not trying to pitch. You're not saying, hey, okay, great, I've met you. Can you give me a bunch of referrals? Hey, I want to build a relationship and start somewhere and then see where you can take it.
Yeah. So for once you've got that one-on-one, what are some, we know what bad things to do are like, hey, do you need a life insurance policy? I mean, something like so we know what feels icky, or I'm sure I'm not the only person that it feels icky when someone links in with me on LinkedIn and then immediately tries to sell me something.
Pitch slap.
But what are some good, whether it's directly or on LinkedIn, what are some smart ways to approach your networking so that people you'd want to be someone that people would want to connect with? Yeah.
How many hours do we have to go into this? So let me give a very simple tool to help the one-on-one, and we can definitely talk about LinkedIn too. So you're going into a conversation with somebody. Let's say it's a Zoom call. You've been introduced. You don't really know them. I would, by the way, go on LinkedIn and look up their profile, do a quick, find out a little bit about them before you have that call. And what I think an overarching mindset that's really good is one of curiosity, right? So the way I approach meeting somebody new is I'm always just like, hey, I want to find out about you, ask some questions. And something I talk about in networking in the 21st century is this idea of the next question. And it's something that we do with people we know, but we don't often do with people we don't know. And it's simply this: you ask a question relatively open-ended, they answer it. Instead of responding, ask another question based on their answer. So it might be, hey, how long have you been in your line of work? They say 7 years. It's normal for us to then go, hey, let me tell you more about me and how long I've been doing what I do. It's a habit to get into. So it takes a little time, but you just pause and go, oh, what brought you into it? What did you do before? How do you like it? What's the biggest thing you're working on? What's been and you just kind of keep the conversation focused on them, right? What brought you into this industry? Oh, X, Y, and Z. And you just can keep going down that rabbit hole. It actually is also really good for being at parties and meeting somebody you don't know, because you just concentrate on them. And then human nature means they'll be reciprocal and eventually start asking you. But a great networking meeting, by the way, from my perspective, is something that I've walked away with a ton of knowledge about how I can help them, what they're working on. that's how you build social capital, not telling them about yourself. Kind of the same thing on LinkedIn. If I connect with somebody on LinkedIn, I'm not going to pitch them right away. I might just say, hey, it's great to connect. Let me know how I can help. And then it's paying attention if they do post or if they comment and maybe trying to get in on that conversation. And then if there's something that builds from there, reaching out and saying, hey, you know what? I'd love to grab 30 minutes. I really like what you're posting. You up for that? That's it.
Love that.
It takes a little bit of discipline and intentionality, especially in our busy time. Like I'll actually have reminders pop up that's like, hey, you're trying to build a relationship with so-and-so, go and look up on LinkedIn. But that's fine. I need technology to help me remember things. And that's what it's there for. But it's still kind of, you wouldn't, going back to our singles example, you wouldn't meet somebody and be like, hey, you're pretty cool. Want to get married? You go, no, can we have a first date? And then maybe a second, and you keep building from there.
Yeah. And that you are interested in them, because I think we've all been in that conversation where someone just talks about themselves. Even if you're curious about them, I will say for me, when I do that, depending on who it is, if it's really networking, like, oh, can we help each other? And if I spend, all that time and am legitimately curious about what they do, and then they don't ask me about me, which happens sometimes, I that's like a mark. Like it doesn't have to be about me, but I'd like them to say, oh, well, and I'd love to learn about you. Even if there's not time now, then there's another conversation. Is there something wrong with that? Or is that?
I mean, no, it is a human thing. Like you hope people are reciprocal, and often they are, but not always. For me, I'd probably walk out of that meeting maybe a little like, you know what? I don't even walk out that bummed, because I'm also taking a long-term approach to it. And I guess that was the one suggestion I would make is like, yes, in that conversation, it didn't come to me very much, but I found out a lot about them, and B, I let them talk. I actually have had this said to me where this is years and years ago. This woman goes, oh, you're such a good conversationalist. And I didn't say a damn, like she was just a talker. But, if you think about how rarely we get people to listen to us in our life, I mean, that's why, a lot of times we like when our significant other will listen to us about how our day was. And eventually, depending on how long you've been together, they're like, I don't even really care that much. So I would almost say, like, if I had a conversation and they just did all the talking, I might go, hey, that's great, because I just built up a ton of social capital with them.
Yeah.
Because even if they didn't ask, a lot of times they still know. Like they're like, they get that. Every once in a while, there's somebody who's just
depends on the situation. If they were a prospect, I wouldn't care. I would want to focus on them. If it was like true COI or networking or like, I don't know, at least a little bit. It does kind of bug me, but I
be bugged. I'm not saying you shouldn't. Be bothered, but I guess I would say, don't let it be a mark against that relationship. Because in some ways I would go, hey, you just invested, right? Let's keep this going. There's that adage or the story about, some executive made a mistake that cost the company, $500,000. And they're like, why didn't the boss fire him? And the boss is like, hey, I just invested $500,000 in him learning not to do that. So yeah.
Okay. I hear you. I'm open. Open.
Good.
Yeah. Like if there's a skill, are there certain skills that you think that financial advisors or financial professionals really need to develop more? Like they could really sharpen the saw in a certain area?
No, I think they're all wonderful and fantastic. Wow. Yeah. Here's the things. If I was, you had a financial advisor in front of me, let's say somebody who's had some success, not brand new. I mean, this accounts for brand new, but maybe they've been established. The reality is you have to learn the online world. You have to get conversant with these tools. And this is more of a hard skill. And the reason why, the world is not going to be in a place where we don't have these skills. We think about kind of what happens as the great transition happens with the boomers passing away and passing on trillions and trillions of dollars to the next generation. That next generation is on social, is on they want technology. So to not be there is, I mean, your business will fail eventually. But with that, I think, the idea of truly understanding how to understand what makes people tick. And what I mean by that is a lot of professionals and organizations in general have like their really good discovery questions. And, we got our forms you fill out and we're going to, tie it to your goals. All that stuff is great. But the people I've seen that are really successful are the ones that can take all that, get the information, then put it aside. And then we've been talking about relationships. Why are relationships important? Because it's okay, human to human. What is your motivator? What are the fears? What are the hopes? What are the aspirations? What are the challenges? If I can, play that role to understand the human psychology behind the decisions you're going to make, those people are going to be very successful. They have been in the past. And I think a lot of it was done, kind of accidentally, but now we know a lot about behavioral psychology, all these different things. You got to dive into that. And those are the areas I'd probably focus an advisor on right now.
I totally agree. And that's going to have a lot more having people feel like you're a trusted advisor than putting it on your website. I'm a trusted advisor. I value integrity. I hope
you got to be one, right?
But then they'll really get that. You're really building the trust. I love that.
Yeah.
So much great information. David, tell us about where people can get your books, the new, like hot off it's not really a press anymore. Sometimes they're a press.
I mean, there's a press in some random factory somewhere in the United States that's printing out books right when you order them. So something like that. So all of our books are available on Amazon, Kindle, paperback, hardcover. Would love if you want any more help or just want to connect. I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, quite a bit. And just look for me, linkedin.com/in/IamDfish, IAMDFISH. Would love to connect. And also we have a landing page with a bunch of free resources, including how to maximize your LinkedIn profile, step-by-step template for that, a lot of other great material. And that's at davidjppfisher.com/podcast/advisor radio.
Beautiful. And a couple of things, go out and link on LinkedIn with David, because why don't you, he'll show you by example, his profile, how he posts, and he posts really great content. So it's not just like you're following something. So definitely do that. Go get his books for sure. They're so well written and really practical. He knows the advisor market. They're not solely written for advisors, but this is a lot of the work that he's done in financial services. So thank you as always for being with us on the show. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure as always.
Yeah. And thank you all for watching or listening or however you're consuming this. I am so grateful that you're here. Again, my name is Ellen Rogan, and you can find out more about me and the kinds of work I do with advisors and financial services firms at ellenrogan.com. And if you go to ellenrogan.com/horse's mouth, you can download my special report, What Extraordinary Advisors Know That Others Don't. And the question to ponder today is, how are you going to build your network in the 21st century? Remember to be great and create great every single day.